So it's about 7 o'clock. I'd like to get started. I'd like to introduce myself really quickly. My name is Lauren Flores. I'm a librarian here at San Antonio Public Library. I'd also like to introduce my moderator today. Her name is Priscilla. She is in chat, so if you have a question, please feel free to ask a question in chat. If we have time, we'll be able to answer your questions. Priscilla will be communicating with me, and I'll try to answer my questions as best as I can, or yours rather. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to do a couple of quick things before we get underway. I'd like to talk a little bit about the program itself. So this is a really short program. We get a lot of really new interesting words in the news, and so this is just a way that we can all keep up with some of the vocabulary that's popping up. So we'll have 5 terms that we're going to talk about today. One is going to be K-pop, the other one is Stan, there's TikTok, and then canceled and cancel culture. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with K-pop. And again, just to let you know, if you're in chat, please ask questions. Priscilla will help you. We also have a link to a companion guide where we have an infographic. So if you'd like to look at that as well, Priscilla's going to be posting that in chat. So let's go ahead and get with K-pop. And so K-pop is really interesting. It's actually a style of music, but it's also a cultural phenomenon. So it does originate from South Korea. So that's where the K in K-pop comes from. It is really similar to some of the other pops that we've seen coming from that area. So there's something called J-pop. There's a derivative of K-pop called Q-pop that's from Kazakhstan. But at any rate, K-pop is very, very influential. It has a particular style. And so what we're looking at right now is the webpage for a band called BTS. They're very popular. And this is their fan webpage, and you'll see that with the K-pop stars, they're all very highly trained. They sing, they dance, they always look at the height of fashion. So they're really, really amazing. And of course, the fans are really very devoted. So I'm going to show you just. It stands for Korean pop. And I'm probably going to say the word wrong, but apparently there's a term for it in Korean. I believe it's Hallyu, which I'm probably saying totally wrong. It stands for Korean pop. So I'll pause for a second. Are there any other questions? And I did answer the question about K-pop. We've got a couple of minutes to go. I'm really curious if there are any K-pop fans in our audience this evening. So it sounds like there's not any other questions coming up. Again, you can always ask and Priscilla will let me know. I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next term, which is Stan. And Stan is really interesting because it does come from a particular work. It's from a song that came out in 2000. And let me pull up a short little sample of that so that you can hear it. It'll take me a second. And actually, that is the OED for Stan. Let me go ahead and put that away for a second. So let's get that up and running. I don't know if y'all have heard this song before. So that was just a really short sample of the song called Stan. It's actually kind of a, I would say, it almost goes into horrorcore because it's a story about a deranged fan. And the singer is Eminem, if you aren't familiar with him. His picture's on the upper right-hand corner. But it does also have a video with Devon Sawa, who was in the Final Destination movies, if y'all have ever seen those, playing Stan, the deranged fan. And so it's interesting because Stan has come to stand for a fan, so someone who's really, really devoted. And it's a noun and it's also a verb. So you can say things like, so-and-so is a stan for K-pop. or you can say, I stan Eminem. So that's how you would use that particular word. And let me pop up the OED. I had showed that briefly earlier, but this is a word that has become so common and so used that it was recognized in the Oxford English Dictionary, which is one of the main dictionaries of the English language. And so the cool thing about OED is it will tell you the origin of certain terms. So if you go to the page, and actually I used my library to get to the OED, because if you get to it, you'll see that you need a subscription for it, but it will tell you the history of certain words and their first appearances and things like that. So that is the word stan. I'm going to pause for a second because we have some time and just check in with the chat. Does anybody have any questions for me? So I'm noticing that there was a question. It's about K-pop, so I'll go ahead and just kind of quickly answer that. My understanding is that K-pop has been around. Awesome, thank you. And I was just getting to that, so thank you for letting me know. My understanding is it started in the early 2000s. There may be a couple of earlier ones, but apparently the first wave was like right at the very beginning of the millennium. And it sounds like the second wave started in around 2007. So hopefully that'll answer your question. Do y'all have any other questions? Because if not, what I will do is I'm going to move forward to our next term, which is TikTok. And again, if you have any questions, we'll just circle back like we just did. So this is TikTok. TikTok is really interesting. If y'all were around when Vine was really popular, that was a website where you could do short little videos. They were teeny tiny because they were only about 6 seconds. TikTok is a little bit longer. My understanding is it's about a minute or so. I'm going to take a quick sip of water while you watch this. This has been so fascinating to me. These are people that make cakes that look really realistic. So there we go. And anyway, TikTok is really interesting because it is something that's really popular with younger people. So for people between the ages of 13 and 30, it's a big deal. So a lot of videos are very entertaining. Sometimes they'll become memes. But I would recommend just going to TikTok and checking. I'm going to take a pause and ask if there are any questions. Hey Priscilla, do y'all have any questions coming up from chat? Awesome. So the thing about TikTok, it is an app. So I would suggest that if you'd like to try it, to go ahead and get your phone and add TikTok. It's interesting because it is a company that's owned by China, so there is an English language version. There's also a version that is Chinese for the Chinese market. So just so you know. Do we have any other questions so far? And I didn't check my timer. So how are we doing with time, Priscilla? Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to move on then to the next term, which would be canceled. And actually with canceled, this is the Urban Dictionary version. I don't know if y'all have ever seen that. It is a bit adult rated, so if you are sensitive to language, I wouldn't recommend going there. But if you want to look up slang, it is a resource. It's at urbandictionary.com. Canceled is basically boycotting someone. So usually it happens to celebrities. It sometimes will happen in the context of public shaming. So if somebody says or does something fairly wrong or reprehensible, people will decide to cancel them. So basically, it's when a group of people say we're going to just take away our support from a certain person or a thing. And so you can say that that person or thing has been canceled. It's interesting because I did look this up because I was confused about the spelling. Cancelled can be spelled with 2 L's, which apparently is the British version, or it can be spelled with 1 L, which is the American version. So I've seen it both ways. But that is basically what canceled is. And so if you hang out a lot on social media, you might see a discussion that's going on. There was a letter written about a week or two ago that talks about being canceled, and we're going to actually talk about canceled culture, which is part of one of our terms that we're going to be talking about today. So, but yes, basically it's really, really similar to a boycott. And it's something that you might even see as a tag. My understanding is that canceled did start out as a hashtag on Twitter. So when people would either be videotaped doing something, or somebody was calling someone out, they would post it on Twitter and they would put the hashtag on it. And it sounds like there was a question maybe coming up. I will have to look that up. So I know that it is a Chinese company and it's fairly recent. If you will give me a second, I can look that up. And of course, if anybody in chat knows the answer, like trivia, that would be cool too, if you'd like to pipe up as well. And just out of curiosity, are there any TikTok users that are in chat today? Oh, wow. Okay. So apparently it was founded in 2012 by Zhang Yiming, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. So I guess it's been around for a long time. Did that answer your question? And it looks like we still have a little bit of time left, so I'm going to wait maybe briefly for a moment or two. If there's no questions, then we'll move on to canceled culture. So I'll go ahead and move on. So this particular page is from the MerriamWebster dictionary. So that's a more official dictionary than urbandictionary.com. But it's really interesting. They actually have a web page that talks about cancel culture and cancel. So I'm going to go ahead and jump onto that site and just kind of show you a little bit. It has a really good discussion. This is their definition. Again, it has to do with removing support for public figures in response to objectionable behavior or opinions. So this can include boycotts. This also mentions refusal to promote their work. And it does talk about the variant spelling. And then there's a couple of instances where they actually use those words, so you can see how they're used. And it does talk about the origin of cancel culture. So it looks like it was also related to Me Too. It does mention how it started out as a hashtag. And then it's really interesting as well because it does also talk about how there's a performative aspect to canceling. So in other words, you're trying to deny attention to a certain person, but you end up causing a bit of a ruckus that people start talking about. And so it's a really interesting concept. And I'm going to jump back and see if we have any questions. Do we have any questions so far, Priscilla? So I'd like to go ahead and kind of check in with the folks in chat and just ask, do Do y'all have any comments, or have y'all actually participated in posting social media and saying, I'm done with, a certain celebrity or a certain cause? And I'm checking to see, I'm looking at the infographic. I don't see a lot on chat right now, so I'm going to just say hello. And we do have a little bit of time left, so what I'll do is I'm going to quickly switch gears. If y'all don't have any questions about cancel culture or any of the other terms that we talked about today, let me get to a different screen. And what I'll do is I'm going to show you, actually, let me take a second. I'm going to get to our LibGuide. It'll take me just a moment. We have a companion guide with a little infographic in case you're interested. So let me show you that. Awesome. So there is our page. You'll see there's a link. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing this every month. So what I would suggest would be to go ahead and check the library's webpage. We have a link to our events, and I can show you that in a moment so you can see where to go to find these. But we will be talking about 5 different terms that are current in any given month. So we also have a spot where if you'd like to continue with any questions, we have what's called a Padlet, so you can post a question here. It may take a while for us to answer, but if you want immediate or faster attention, I would suggest going to Ask My SAPL. And so you can also ask us questions here as well. Let me show you super quickly, since we're on the library page, if you go to the top where it says Events and News and you go to the events calendar, this is where you'll be able to find our other online programming. And so the link to the next 5 and 25 will be here. And let me jump back to the main screen really quickly. And get that out of the way. Let me pull up the link as well. It'll take me just a moment. So if you have any questions, that's the link to my sapl.org. We do have about 10 minutes left in our stream, so I'm going to just hang around and answer questions. So if y'all have any questions or conversations that you'd like to do, we are here to talk with you. And Priscilla, do we have any questions in chat? Awesome. So we'll go ahead and wait. And actually, I'm kind of curious if you don't mind sharing with us, Priscilla. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe any interesting things that, or any interesting experiences that you've had with these 5 terms? I definitely agree. I think it's also very fascinating as well, because it seems like when you're on social media, things seem to happen really, really quickly. And it seems like occasionally you'll have something like the thing that happened about a week ago with the letter. A lot of prominent authors had written about cancel culture. They came out against it, and then there's been this really big debate about it. Some of the people that signed it have said, I didn't mean it. One person said, I didn't even read it. I just saw that there were other people, and so I signed it. So it's really interesting how something really small will blow up or become really, really prominent as time goes by. And just out of curiosity, do any folks in the chat have anything that they would like to share with us, like an experience or just a word that maybe they'd like for us to talk about in our next stream? Okay, so, and just to kind of quickly ask a follow-up question for that, would you like for me to find an example of a person being quote unquote canceled, that type of thing, or what would you like for me to show you? Okay, well, because what I can do is I can just kind of off the top of my head, I know again, the MerriamWebster page talked about, Me Too. And so there were certain people like a comedian, Louis C.K. It turned out that he had had some questionable behavior. And so people withdrew support from him. I think Kevin Spacey would be another person. He's an actor. Some stuff came out. So he had been on a really famous show. I think it went on without him, but all of a sudden he wasn't on the show anymore. So again, it's a way of boycotting people, and it's a type of almost online shaming to call people out for their behavior, if that makes sense. So do we have any response yet, Priscilla? Got it. So we have about 6 minutes. So I'd like to see if anybody else has any questions so far. So it sounds like there are none as of yet. So what I can do is, let's see. What I might do is just jump in. Let me see if I can pull up a web page and just show you a couple of things. Oh, cool. What does boycott mean? Okay, no, wonderful, thank you. So a boycott is traditionally what people have done if they disagree with a certain product or person. So I'm trying to think of some really good famous examples. For instance, if people didn't like the political position of something, they actually would boycott. So that would mean that you wouldn't go and buy a particular item. So, for instance, Chick-fil-A has had a bit of a boycott because of their position towards gender diverse and sexually diverse people. So people will actually go out of their way to avoid buying anything from Chick-fil-A to not support them. There's also other ways that boycotts happen. I'm not quite sure if it's technically a boycott, but I know that in the 80s, the United States and Russia were still enemies, and so there was some boycotting where we kind of took turns not going to each other's games where we were hosting them. So I'm not 100% sure that that's exactly a boycott, but it's kind of something similar where you're like, I'm not going to participate. I'm not going to buy any products. I'm not going to support this person, entity, or thing in any way. Does that make sense? And actually, while I'm waiting, because I know that you may be formulating your response, let me see if I can pull up a page. We're back on our guide page, and I'm actually going to MerriamWebster since they are an official or credible source. So yeah, and this is how they define it. They define it as engaging in a concerted refusal to have dealings with a person, a store, an organization, usually to express disapproval or to force acceptance of certain conditions. So I hope that's helpful and that makes sense. So let me go ahead and I'm going to check in with Priscilla. So do we have any follow-up questions? So let's see, I'm going to go ahead and just show you a couple of things then, since we're in Merriam-Webster, just to look at some things. And let me get to the page. It'll take me just a second. And I'm kind of curious. I'm going to see if Stan is in here. And actually, they do have Stan as well. So I believe Stan was put in the OED in around 2018, so it's been around for a while. But you will see that it is something where it's in here. I'm kind of curious to see if they have anything for K-pop. And actually, it looks like they do, which is kind of cool. So there's their definition of K-pop, which talks about how it's popular music and it originates in South Korea. And it does encompass a variety of styles, so it's not just one type of genre per se. I'm going to circle back and check in. So how are we doing, Priscilla? Do we have any other questions? Awesome, thank you. So I wanted to thank everyone for coming. We are pretty much at the end of our time. If you have any other questions, of course, you can visit our live guide. You can also go to Ask SAPL. And I do have the link. Let me pull that up really quickly. So it's askmysapl.org. And again, keep your eyes peeled. We will have another one coming up next month. If you have any questions or if you'd like to suggest any words, we're happy to accommodate that. Just let us know. Again, thank you so much. We really enjoyed your company. We hope you had a good time, and y'all take care. And we will see you soon. Goodbye, everybody.